The wind howled across the New Mexico plains that December evening in 1878, carrying with it the scent of snow and something else entirely, something that would change Austin Harper's life forever, as he sat alone in his modest ranch house just outside of Placitas. He had just poured himself a glass of whiskey when 3 sharp knocks broke through the quiet, urgent and desperate enough to make him set down his glass and reach for his rifle before approaching the door, because no one came calling at this hour unless trouble followed close behind. When he opened it, the last thing he expected was a woman, young and trembling, with wild dark hair whipping around her face and terror in her green eyes, clutching a screaming infant wrapped in a thin blanket that offered little protection against the bitter cold. She stumbled forward the moment their eyes met, her lips forming words he could barely hear over the baby's wailing and the wind. "Please," she gasped, her voice cracking. "Please help us. They are coming." Austin did not hesitate. Whatever story she carried, whatever danger pursued her, he could not leave a woman and child out in the freezing night. He pulled them both inside, shut the door firmly against the wind, and bolted it. The warmth of the fire immediately began to thaw the ice crystals that had formed on her worn shawl, and she sagged against him for just a moment before her knees buckled. He caught her with one arm, careful not to disturb the baby, and guided her to the chair nearest the fireplace. "You are safe now," he said, though he had no idea if that was true. "Sit down before you fall down." She collapsed into the chair, still holding the crying baby against her chest, her whole body shaking. Austin moved quickly, adding wood to the fire and then finding a quilt from his bedroom to wrap around her shoulders. The baby's cries had softened to hiccuping sobs, and in the firelight he could see it was a little girl, maybe 6 months old, with round cheeks reddened from the cold. "When did you last eat?" Austin asked, already moving toward his small kitchen area. "Yesterday morning," the woman whispered. "We ran out of food 2 days ago. I have been walking since dawn." His jaw tightened. He heated up leftover stew from his dinner, thick with beef and vegetables, and poured a cup of milk, warming it slightly for the baby. The woman watched him with wary eyes, clearly expecting some demand or price for his help, but Austin said nothing. He simply set the food before her and went to wet a clean cloth with warm water. "The baby needs warming too," he said, offering the cloth. "Wipe her face and hands gently." She took it with trembling fingers. "Thank you. I do not know how to repay you." "I am not asking for repayment," Austin said firmly. He pulled a chair across from her and sat down, giving her space but wanting to understand what danger he had just invited into his home. "My name is Austin Harper. This is my ranch. You are welcome here as long as you need, but I need to know what we are facing. Who is coming?" The woman fed a spoonful of warm stew to the baby first, who opened her mouth eagerly despite her tears. Only then did she take a bite herself, and Austin watched her struggle not to devour it too quickly. When she finally spoke, her voice was steadier but laced with fear. "My name is Natalie Evans. This is my sister's daughter, Sarah. My sister died 3 weeks ago. Fever took her fast. Her husband, he is not Sarah's real father. He married my sister when she was already carrying another man's child. He treated Sarah well enough while my sister lived, but after she passed, everything changed." She paused to feed the baby another spoonful. "He started drinking more, spending money we did not have. Then men came, collecting debts. He told them they could take Sarah, said she was not his blood anyway and they could sell her to cover what he owed." Austin's hands curled into fists. "He sold a baby, he tried to. I heard him talking to them, making the arrangement. They were coming to get her the next morning." Natalie's eyes filled with tears, but her voice remained steady. "I took her in the middle of the night. I took what little money my sister had hidden and started walking west. I thought I could get far enough away, find work in a town where nobody knew us, but they followed. I saw them yesterday, 3 men on horses, asking about us in the settlements I passed through. I have been walking off the main roads, hiding during the day sometimes, but with Sarah crying, it is hard to stay hidden. I saw your light from the road and I just prayed you might be a decent man. Austin absorbed this information, his mind already working through possibilities. Where did you come from? Santa Fe. We have been walking for 3 weeks. That was nearly 30 miles on foot with a baby, through rough terrain and cold weather. The woman had spine, he would give her that. And you think they tracked you this far? I know they did. I saw their campfire last night, maybe 2 miles back. I waited until dark and ran. I thought maybe the cold would slow them down, but I could not risk stopping. She looked down at Sarah, who had fallen asleep against her chest, finally warm and fed. I will leave in the morning if you want. I will not bring trouble to your door. You will do no such thing, Austin said. You are in no condition to travel, and neither is the baby. We will figure this out. Natalie studied him with those sharp green eyes, trying to understand what kind of man would help a stranger without question. Austin knew he must look rough to her, with his weathered face and calloused hands, his dark hair too long and his beard in need of trimming. He was 32 years old and had lived alone on this ranch for 5 years, ever since he had saved enough money from his years working cattle drives to buy his own land. He was not rich, but he was comfortable, and he had built something here that mattered to him. He was not about to let hired thugs terrorize a woman and child. "Why are you helping us?" she asked quietly. "Because it is the right thing to do," Austin said simply. "Now finish eating and get some rest. We will deal with tomorrow when it comes." He set up his bed for them, insisting despite Natalie's protests. He would sleep on the floor near the fire, which he had done plenty of times before. Natalie was so exhausted that she barely managed to remove her worn boots before she collapsed onto the bed with Sarah tucked safely beside her. Austin watched them for a moment, something stirring in his chest that he had not felt in years, a protective instinct that went beyond simple human decency. He checked his rifle and his pistol, making sure both were loaded and ready. Then he settled near the fire with a blanket, his back against the wall where he could see the door and the window. Sleep came fitfully, his senses attuned to any sound outside, but the night remained quiet except for the wind. Dawn broke cold and gray. Austin woke to find Natalie already up, trying to quietly stoke the fire without waking the baby. She had dark circles under her eyes and moved with the stiffness of someone whose body had been pushed past its limits. "You should have slept longer," Austin said, sitting up. "I am not used to sleeping when there is work to be done," she replied. "And you have already done so much for us. The least I can do is make breakfast." Austin did not argue. He went outside to check on his horses and scan the surrounding area. The ranch was set in a small valley with hills on 3 sides, which gave him a good vantage point. He saw no signs of riders, no tracks in the light dusting of snow that had fallen during the night. That did not mean they were not coming, just that they had not arrived yet. When he returned inside, Natalie had somehow managed to make coffee and fry up eggs and bacon, using the supplies she found in his kitchen. Sarah was awake, cooing softly from the bed, and Natalie moved between cooking and checking on the baby with practiced efficiency. "You are good with her," Austin observed, pouring himself coffee. "I helped my sister care for her from the day she was born. Sarah is like my own child." Natalie's expression softened as she looked at the baby. "My sister made me promise to keep her safe if anything happened. I will not break that promise." They ate breakfast together, and Austin found himself watching Natalie more than he meant to. She was probably 23 or 24, younger than him by nearly a decade, but there was a strength in her that spoke of someone who had faced hardship before. Her hands were work-worn, her clothes patched and mended, but she carried herself with dignity. She was beautiful too, though he suspected she had no idea, with her dark hair and those startling green eyes and a face that showed character more than delicate features. "Tell me about the men chasing you," Austin said. "What do they look like? Do you know their names?" Natalie set down her fork. "The one leading them is called Dutch Morgan. He is tall, has a scar across his left cheek. The other two I only saw from a distance. One is heavy-set, the other thin and mean-looking. Dutch does collections for the saloon owner in Santa Fe, a man named Carvetti who runs gambling tables. My brother-in-law owed Carvetti almost $200. Austin whistled low. That was a significant debt for a working man. "And they really think they can sell a baby to cover it." "There are people who buy children," Natalie said, her voice hollow. "Orphans mostly, but sometimes others. They ship them east to work in factories or worse. Dutch told my brother-in-law he knew someone who would pay $50 for a healthy baby girl." The casual cruelty of it made Austin's blood boil. "That is not going to happen. I give you my word." "How can you stop 3 armed men?" Natalie asked, not challenging him but genuinely worried. "I cannot ask you to risk your life for us." "You did not ask. I am offering." Austin drained his coffee and stood. "I am going to ride into Placida's, talk to the sheriff. Maybe we can get the law on our side." "The law has never been on my side," Natalie said bitterly. "My brother-in-law is Sarah's legal guardian, at least on paper. The sheriff might just hand her back to him." Austin had not considered that, but she was right. Without proof of the man's intentions, the sheriff might see this as a family matter. "Then we will find another way." "But I still want to let the law know there might be trouble. Sheriff Martinez is a decent man. He will not let anyone hurt you while you are under my protection." Natalie looked like she wanted to argue, but Sarah started fussing and she turned her attention to the baby. Austin gathered his coat and hat, checking his guns again out of habit. "Stay inside," he told her. "Keep the door bolted. I will be back within 2 hours. If anyone comes before then, do not answer the door." "Austin," Natalie said, and it was the first time she had used his name. "Thank you." "For everything." He nodded, not trusting himself to say anything that would not sound foolish, and headed out to saddle his horse. The ride into Placida's took 30 minutes, and he used the time to think through his options. He could not keep Natalie and Sarah hidden forever, and he could not fight off 3 men indefinitely if it came to that. But he could make it costly enough for them that they might decide a baby was not worth the trouble. Placida's was small, barely more than a main street with a general store, a church, a saloon, and a sheriff's office. Austin tied his horse outside the office and found Sheriff Martinez inside, warming his hands by a pot-bellied stove. "Austin Harper," the sheriff greeted him. "What brings you to town on a cold morning like this?" "Trouble, maybe," Austin said. He explained the situation, leaving out nothing. Sheriff Martinez listened with a deepening frown. "You are right that the law gets complicated when family is involved," the sheriff said when Austin finished. "But selling a child to cover a gambling debt is illegal, no matter who has guardianship. If these men show up making threats, I will deal with them, but I cannot do much if they have not committed a crime yet." "What if they have committed crimes elsewhere?" Austin asked. "Men who do this kind of work usually have records." "If I knew their names, I could check," Martinez said. "Dutch Morgan, you said. I will send some telegrams, see what I can find out. In the meantime, you keep that woman and baby safe." "You have my word that if anyone reports trouble at your ranch, I will be there as fast as my horse can carry me." It was the best Austin could hope for. He thanked the sheriff and stopped at the general store on his way out of town, buying supplies he did not really need just to give him an excuse to ask the storekeeper if any strangers had been through recently. 3 men came through yesterday evening, the storekeeper told him. Asked if I had seen a woman with a baby. I told them no, which was true at the time. They bought some supplies and rode south. South was the wrong direction, which meant either they had lost Natalie's trail or they were circling around. Austin bought a bag of peppermint sticks for no reason other than he thought they might make Natalie smile, then rode back to his ranch faster than was probably wise on the icy roads. Natalie opened the door only after he called out to her, and the relief on her face when she saw him made something warm spread through his chest. "No sign of them yet," he reported. "The sheriff knows what is happening and will help if it comes to that. Some men matching their description were in town yesterday, but they headed south. They are probably checking all the ranches in the area," Natalie said. She had cleaned up the kitchen while he was gone and somehow made his sparse house look more lived in. "It is only a matter of time before they come here." "Let them come," Austin said. "This is my land and I have every right to defend it and my guests." Over the next few days, an unexpected routine developed. Austin went about his daily work of caring for his small herd of cattle and horses, but he stayed closer to the house than usual, always within sight of the door. Natalie threw herself into making herself useful, cooking meals that were better than anything Austin had tasted in years, mending his clothes and organizing his chaotic pantry. Sarah thrived in the warmth and safety, growing more animated each day, her laughter filling the house with a sound Austin had not realized he missed. In the evenings, after Sarah was asleep, Austin and Natalie would sit by the fire and talk. She told him about growing up in Missouri, how her parents had died when she was 16 and her sister was 14, how they had managed on their own until her sister met the man who would become her husband, and they moved west hoping for better opportunities. Austin told her about his own family, parents who had died of cholera during his childhood, years spent working whatever jobs he could find until he saved enough to build this ranch. "You have built something good here," Natalie said one evening, looking around the sturdy house with its solid furniture and warm fire. "You should be proud." "It feels more like a home with you and Sarah here," Austin admitted, then immediately wished he could take back the words. They sounded too forward, too presumptuous, but Natalie did not look offended. She met his eyes across the fire and something passed between them, an acknowledgement of the growing connection neither of them had expected. "I have been thinking," she said carefully. "When this is over, when Sarah is safe, I will need to find work. I was wondering if there might be ranches around here that need help. I am a hard worker, and I can cook and clean and handle animals." "You could stay here," Austin said before he could stop himself. "I mean, I could use help with the ranch. It is too much for one person, really. I could pay you fair wages and you and Sarah would have a place to live." Natalie studied him, trying to gauge his true intentions. "That is very generous, but I would not want to impose. You have already done so much." "It is not imposing if I am offering," Austin said. "And I am not being entirely selfless. You are right that I need help. I have been putting off repairs and projects because there are only so many hours in a day. If you were here, we could get this place running properly, maybe even expand the herd. You would be earning your keep." "What would people say?" Natalie asked quietly. "An unmarried woman living with an unmarried man." Austin had not thought about that, but she was right to consider it. Reputation mattered, especially for a woman. "We could make it proper," he said slowly. "I could build you a separate cabin, something small but comfortable, Or you could stay in the main house and I could sleep in the barn." "That is ridiculous," Natalie said with the first real smile he had seen from her. "You are not sleeping in your own barn. We are both adults. We can live under the same roof without scandal as long as we are respectful about it." "Then you will stay?" Austin asked, hope rising in his chest. "Let us get through this trouble first," Natalie said. "Then we can talk about the future." The trouble came on the 6th day. Austin was in the barn repairing a stall door when he heard horses approaching. He grabbed his rifle and moved to the barn door, staying in the shadows where he could see without being seen. 3 riders came up the road, moving with the casual confidence of men who were used to getting their way through intimidation. The leader matched Natalie's description of Dutch Morgan perfectly, tall and hard-faced with a scar cutting through his stubble. The other 2 flanked him, the heavy one carrying a shotgun and the thin one resting his hand on his pistol. Austin stepped out of the barn before they could reach the house, his rifle held ready but not yet aimed. "This is private property. State your business." Dutch reined in his horse, looking Austin over with cold eyes. "We are looking for a woman and a baby." Dark-haired woman, about 23, traveling alone. "Thought maybe you might have seen her." "Why are you looking for her?" Austin asked, keeping his voice level. "That is our business," Dutch said. "You seen her or not?" "I have seen a lot of travelers," Austin said. "None of them are your concern." The thin man spoke up, his voice ready and mean. "We know she came this way. We tracked her footprints to within a mile of here before the snow covered them. Now you can tell us if she is here, or we can search the place ourselves." "You will do no such thing," Austin said, finally raising the rifle to point at Dutch's chest. "This is my land and I am telling you to leave." Dutch did not seem bothered by the rifle. "You are making a mistake, friend. That woman stole property that does not belong to her. We are just here to return what was taken." "A baby is not property," Austin said, his voice hard as iron. "And that woman is under my protection. You have 3 seconds to turn those horses around before I start shooting." The heavy man lifted his shotgun, but Dutch held up a hand, stopping him. "Easy now. We do not want trouble, but you need to understand what you are getting into. The girl's father wants her back. He has every legal right to her. You are harboring a kidnapper." "The girl's mother is dead," Austin said, "and her stepfather tried to sell her to cover his debts." "I know the whole story, so do not try to play me for a fool. Sheriff Martinez in Placitas knows about you too. If anything happens here, he will be coming for you." That seemed to give Dutch pause. He exchanged glances with his men, recalculating. "The sheriff has no jurisdiction over a family matter. He has jurisdiction over men threatening law-abiding citizens," Austin countered. "Now I have been patient, but my patience is running out. Get off my land." Dutch stared at him for a long moment, and Austin could see the calculation in his eyes, weighing the risk against the reward. Finally, Dutch nodded slowly. "All right, we will go, but this is not over. That baby is worth money to us, and we do not give up easy." "Neither do I," Austin said. The 3 men turned their horses and rode away, but Austin knew they would be back. He watched until they disappeared from view, then ran to the house. Natalie was standing just inside the door, Sarah in her arms, her face pale. "I heard everything," she said. "They are not going to stop." "I know," Austin said. He set down his rifle and took her hands, baby and all, in his. "But neither am I. We need to make this legal, make it so they cannot take Sarah even if they wanted to." "How?" Natalie asked. "Her stepfather has legal guardianship. Then we need to break that guardianship. We need a lawyer, and we need to prove that he is unfit. Your testimony about him trying to sell her should be enough, especially if Sheriff Martinez backs us up." "Lawyers cost money I do not have," Natalie said. "I have money," Austin said, "and I am willing to spend it." Sarah deserves to grow up safe with someone who loves her. That someone is you." Natalie's eyes filled with tears. "Why are you doing this? We are nothing to you." Austin reached up and gently wiped a tear from her cheek, the gesture intimate and tender. "You are not nothing to me. These past days, having you here, seeing Sarah grow and hearing you laugh, it has made me realize how lonely I have been. I am not doing this out of obligation, Natalie. I am doing this because I care about you, about both of you." She drew in a shaky breath. "I care about you too. More than I should, given the circumstances." "There is no should or should not," Austin said softly. "There is just what we feel." Sarah chose that moment to grab Austin's finger, wrapping her tiny hand around it with surprising strength, and they both laughed, the tension breaking. But the warmth remained, and when Natalie looked up at him, Austin saw in her eyes the same longing he felt. "We should go to Santa Fe," Natalie said. "Face this head on. If we can get my brother-in-law to relinquish guardianship, those men will have no reason to chase us." "He tried to sell his stepdaughter," Austin pointed out. "He is not likely to do the right thing now." "Then we force him to," Natalie said, her jaw set with determination. "We threaten to expose what he did. A man like him depends on his reputation, such as it is. If word gets out that he sold a baby, he will be finished in Santa Fe." Austin considered this. It was risky, but it might work. "All right, but we do it smart. We bring the sheriff with us, make it official, and we bring a lawyer who can draw up the papers immediately if he agrees." Over the next 2 days, they made their plans. Sheriff Martinez agreed to accompany them, intrigued by the legal challenge and willing to help. He recommended a lawyer in Santa Fe, a man named Thornton who had a reputation for taking on difficult cases. Austin hired Thornton via telegram, explaining the situation and the urgency. They set out for Santa Fe on a cold but clear morning, Austin driving a wagon with Natalie and Sarah tucked under blankets in the back, Sheriff Martinez riding alongside on his horse. The 30-mile journey took most of the day, and they arrived in Santa Fe as the sun was setting, painting the adobe buildings in shades of gold and red. Natalie directed them to the small house where her brother-in-law lived, a run-down structure on the edge of town. Smoke rose from the chimney, indicating he was home. Austin helped Natalie down from the wagon, Sarah bundled in her arms, and they approached the door together with the sheriff and lawyer flanking them. Austin knocked firmly. After a long moment, the door opened, revealing a man in his 40s with bloodshot eyes and the sour smell of whiskey on his breath. When he saw Natalie, his face twisted with anger. "You," he spat. "You stole my daughter." "She is not your daughter," Natalie said, her voice steady despite her fear. "She is my sister's daughter, and you tried to sell her." "I did no such thing," the man said, but his eyes shifted nervously to the sheriff. "She is lying." Sheriff Martinez stepped forward. "Mr. Evans, I am Sheriff Martinez from Placitas. We have testimony that you arranged to sell this child to cover gambling debts. That is illegal under territorial law." "You have no proof," Evans said, but sweat beaded on his forehead. Lawyer Thornton spoke up, his voice crisp and professional. "We have Miss Natalie's sworn testimony, and we are prepared to investigate further. We can speak to the men you dealt with, to the saloon owner, to your neighbors. If we find evidence of your intention to sell this child, you will face criminal charges. However, we are prepared to offer you an alternative." Evans' eyes narrowed. "What alternative?" "You sign over guardianship of the child to Miss Natalie," Thornton said, pulling papers from his bag. "You do it now in front of witnesses and we walk away. No charges, no investigation. You get to keep your reputation and your freedom." "And if I refuse?" Evans asked. Austin stepped forward, his presence imposing in the doorway. Then we make sure everyone in Santa Fe knows what kind of man you are. We talk to your employer, your landlord, every saloon and store in town. We make it so you cannot show your face without people knowing you tried to sell a baby. And we press criminal charges. You will be lucky to avoid prison." Evans looked at each of them in turn, seeing no sympathy anywhere. Finally, his shoulders slumped. "Fine, give me the papers." They moved inside, where Thornton laid out the guardianship transfer documents on the small table. Evans signed them with shaking hands, barely reading the words. Sheriff Martinez and Thornton signed as witnesses, and just like that, it was done. Natalie was Sarah's legal guardian. "Get out," Evans said, not looking at any of them. "Take her and get out." They did not need to be told twice. Back in the wagon, Natalie held Sarah close, tears streaming down her face, but these were tears of relief. "She is really mine now," she whispered. "She is safe." "She is safe," Austin confirmed, putting an arm around her shoulders. "You both are." They spent the night at a boarding house in Santa Fe, with Natalie and Sarah sharing one room and Austin taking another. In the morning, they began the journey back to Placida's, the mood considerably lighter than it had been on the way there. Sheriff Martinez split off to return to his duties, and Austin drove the wagon with Natalie sitting beside him now, Sarah sleeping peacefully in a basket at their feet. "What happens now?" Natalie asked as they rolled through the New Mexico landscape. "Now we go home," Austin said, and the way he said home made it clear he meant the ranch. "We figure out how to make this work, the three of us." "The three of us," Natalie repeated, testing the words. "I like the sound of that." Austin glanced at her, seeing the soft smile on her face, the way the wind caught her dark hair. "Natalie, I know we have not known each other long, and I do not want to rush you into anything, but I need you to know something. These past days with you, they have been the best days I have had in years. You and Sarah, you have brought life to my house, to my whole existence. I would like you to stay, not just as someone who works for me, but as part of my family. If you will have me, that is." Natalie turned to face him fully, her green eyes searching his. "Are you asking what I think you are asking?" "I am asking if you would consider, eventually, making this permanent," Austin said. "I know it is fast, and I know you have been through a lot. I am not asking for an answer today. But I want you to know that my intentions are honorable and my feelings are real." "My feelings are real too," Natalie said softly. "You have given me and Sarah everything: safety, protection, a home. But more than that, you have given me hope. When I knocked on your door, I was running for our lives, terrified and alone. You let us in without question. You risked your own safety for us. How could I not fall in love with a man like that?" Austin's heart felt like it might burst. "You love me." "I do," Natalie said, and the certainty in her voice left no room for doubt. "I love you, Austin Harper. I think I started falling for you the moment you wrapped that quilt around my shoulders and told me I was safe." Austin pulled the wagon to a stop right there in the middle of the road. He turned to her, cupping her face in his hands, and kissed her with all the pent-up emotion of the past days. Natalie kissed him back, her hands clutching his coat, and for a long moment, there was nothing in the world but the two of them and the love growing between them. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Austin rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me, Natalie, not someday but soon. Let us make this official, make us a real family." "Yes," Natalie said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, I will marry you." They arrived back at the ranch that evening, and it truly felt like coming home. Austin carried a sleeping Sarah inside while Natalie followed, and as they settled in, the house seemed to glow with warmth and possibility. Over the next few weeks, they made plans for the wedding. It would be small, held in the little church in Placida's with Sheriff Martinez and Lawyer Thornton as witnesses. Natalie made herself a simple but beautiful dress from fabric Austin bought in town, and Austin got a new suit, the first he had owned in years. The wedding took place on a sunny day in late January 1879. Natalie walked down the aisle of the small church with Sarah in her arms, and Austin thought he had never seen anything more beautiful. They exchanged vows in front of God and their few friends, promising to love and honor each other for the rest of their lives. The kiss at the end of the ceremony was sweet and full of promise, and when they turned to face the small gathering, Sarah chose that moment to let out a happy squeal, making everyone laugh. They held a simple reception at the ranch, with Sheriff Martinez and his wife, Lawyer Thornton and his fiancée, and a few neighbors Austin had come to know over the years. As the sun set and their guests departed, Austin and Natalie stood on the porch, watching the sky turn brilliant shades of orange and pink. "This is really happening," Natalie said, leaning against her new husband. "We are really married." "We really are," Austin said, wrapping his arms around her. "You are stuck with me now, Mrs. Harper." "I cannot think of anywhere I would rather be stuck," Natalie said, turning to kiss him. That night, after Sarah was asleep in the small cradle Austin had built for her, Austin and Natalie came together as husband and wife, their love expressed in gentle touches and whispered promises. Natalie had been nervous, having never been with a man before, but Austin was patient and tender, making sure she felt cherished and safe. Their union was sweet and filled with love, and afterward they lay tangled together, talking late into the night about their dreams and plans for the future. The years that followed were good ones, filled with hard work and deep happiness. Natalie proved to be every bit the partner Austin had hoped for, working alongside him to expand the ranch. They bought more cattle, built a larger barn, and even added rooms to the house as their family grew. Sarah thrived, growing into a bright and energetic little girl who followed Austin everywhere, calling him Papa from the time she could talk. When she was 3 years old, Natalie gave birth to their first child together, a son they named Andrew. 2 years later, another daughter came, whom they named Grace. And 3 years after that, one more son, whom they called Thomas. The ranch prospered under their combined efforts. Natalie's cooking became legendary in Placitas, and she often sold her baked goods in town to earn extra money. Austin's herd grew to be one of the finest in the region, and he earned a reputation as an honest dealer and a good neighbor. They faced challenges, as all families do. There were harsh winters and dry summers, times when money was tight and worry kept them up at night. But they faced everything together, their love growing stronger with each trial they overcame. One evening in the spring of 1890, 11 years after Natalie had first knocked on his door, Austin sat on the porch watching his children play in the yard. Sarah was 14 now, a young woman who helped her mother with the younger children and showed promise with the horses. Andrew was 8, serious and thoughtful, always asking questions about how things worked. Grace was 6, a whirlwind of energy and laughter. Thomas was 3, still small enough to curl up in his father's lap. Natalie came out to join him, settling into the chair beside his, and they sat in comfortable silence, watching their family. "You ever think about that night?" Natalie asked. "When I showed up on your doorstep with Sarah?" "All the time," Austin admitted. "It was the night my life truly began." "Mine too," Natalie said. She reached over and took his hand, their fingers intertwining with the ease of long practice. "I was so scared. I thought we would die out there in the cold. But you opened your door and you let us in and you gave us everything." "You gave me everything," Austin corrected. "You gave me a family, a purpose, a reason to build something that matters. I was just existing before you came. You made me live." Natalie leaned over and kissed him, soft and sweet. "I love you, Austin Harper, more today than the day I married you, and I will love you more tomorrow than I do today." "And I love you," Austin said, "forever." As the sun set over their land, painting the sky in brilliant colors, their children's laughter rang out across the ranch. Sarah was teaching Andrew how to rope a fence post, while Grace and Thomas played with the ranch dogs. It was a scene of perfect domestic happiness, the kind that came from years of love and hard work and commitment. Inside the house, the walls held photographs of their growing family. The table where Natalie had first eaten stew while holding a crying baby now seated 7 comfortably. The bed where she had slept that first exhausted night had been replaced with a larger one, where Austin and Natalie still came together with the same passion and tenderness they had shared on their wedding night. The ranch itself had grown too, expanding to nearly 200 acres with a healthy herd of cattle and horses. Austin had built Natalie the separate kitchen she had always wanted, and a proper schoolroom where she taught their children to read and write and figure. They had hired help now, a young man named Pedro who helped with the cattle, and an older woman named Maria who assisted Natalie with the house and the younger children. But despite the growth and changes, the heart of it remained the same. It was a home built on love, on the choice Austin had made to open his door to a desperate woman and a crying baby on a cold winter night. Dutch Morgan and his men never returned. Natalie's brother-in-law died a few years after they left Santa Fe, drinking himself to death according to the reports they heard. The money he had owed was never paid, and Carvetti's gambling operation was shut down by the territorial authorities after several complaints. Sheriff Martinez retired eventually, but he remained a close friend of the family, often visiting with his grandchildren who loved to play with the Harper children. Lawyer Thornton had moved to Albuquerque to take a position with the territorial government, but he still sent Christmas cards every year, always noting how pleased he was that his intervention had resulted in such a happy family. As Sarah grew older, she began to ask questions about her mother and her early life. Natalie always told her the truth, never hiding the difficult parts but always emphasizing how much her mother had loved her. Austin made sure Sarah knew that while he might not be her father by blood, he was her father in every way that mattered, and he loved her just as much as he loved the children he and Natalie had together. "You were the reason I met your mother," he told Sarah one day when she was troubled by thoughts of her origins. "You were the reason I got this family. I will always be grateful that you came into my life." Sarah had hugged him tight, and that was the end of her doubts. The children grew, as children do. Sarah eventually married a rancher's son from a neighboring property, a good young man named Daniel who treated her like a queen. Austin walked her down the aisle with tears in his eyes, Natalie crying happily beside him. Andrew showed an aptitude for numbers, and eventually went to study at a school in Albuquerque, with plans to become an accountant. Grace inherited her mother's talent for cooking and her father's head for business, already talking about opening a restaurant one day. Thomas was still young, but he showed signs of becoming the best horseman in the family. On their 15th wedding anniversary, Austin surprised Natalie with a trip to Albuquerque, their first real trip away from the ranch since they had married. They stayed in a hotel, ate in restaurants, and walked through the growing city hand in hand like young lovers. 15 years, Natalie marveled as they stood on the balcony of their hotel room, looking out at the city lights. "It feels like yesterday and like forever all at once." 15 years, 4 children, one very successful ranch, and a lifetime of memories, Austin said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "And I would not change a single moment of it. Not even the scary parts," Natalie asked, leaning back against him. Especially not the scary parts, Austin said. They led us here. They made us who we are. Natalie turned in his arms, looking up at him with those green eyes that still made his heart skip a beat. Make love to me, Austin, like you did on our wedding night. I can do better than that, Austin said, sweeping her up in his arms and carrying her to the bed. I have 15 years of practice now. Their lovemaking that night was passionate and tender, familiar yet still exciting, a perfect expression of the deep love and connection they shared. Afterward, they lay tangled together, talking and laughing until they fell asleep in each other's arms. They returned to the ranch refreshed and more in love than ever, ready to face whatever challenges the future might bring. And there were challenges, as there always are in life. Droughts and storms, illness and injury, the normal trials of raising a family and running a business. But through it all, Austin and Natalie faced everything together, their love the foundation that kept their family strong. Years passed, and the children grew into adults with families of their own. The ranch house that had once seemed so spacious now overflowed during holidays and special occasions, filled with grandchildren running through the halls and spilling out into the yard. Austin and Natalie, now in their 50s, watched it all with deep satisfaction and joy. Sarah had given them 3 grandchildren, and there was another on the way. Andrew had married a teacher from Albuquerque and had 2 children. Grace had indeed opened her restaurant in Placitas, and it was already becoming famous throughout New Mexico. Thomas had stayed on the ranch, working alongside his father and preparing to take over the operation one day. One evening, as Austin and Natalie sat on their porch watching yet another sunset, they reflected on the long, winding road that had brought them to this moment. "You remember what you said that first night?" Austin asked. "When I asked who was coming after you." "I said they were coming," Natalie said. "I was so terrified." "I am glad you knocked on my door," Austin said. "Out of all the houses you could have found, all the people you could have asked for help, I am so glad it was me." "I am glad too," Natalie said. "I think fate brought me to your door, Austin. I think we were always meant to find each other." "I believe that," Austin said. "I believe some things are just meant to be." They sat in silence for a while, holding hands, watching as their grandchildren played in the yard with their parents watching over them. Thomas was teaching his oldest nephew how to sit a horse, while Sarah supervised from the fence, her pregnant belly prominent under her dress. Andrew's children were helping Grace bake something in the kitchen, their laughter drifting out through the open windows. It was a scene of such perfect happiness that Austin felt his throat tighten with emotion. This was what he had built, what he and Natalie had created together. Not just a ranch or a business, but a legacy of love and family that would continue long after they were gone. "I love you, Natalie Harper," he said, his voice thick with feeling. "Thank you for knocking on my door. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for building this life with me." Natalie squeezed his hand, her own eyes bright with tears. "I love you too, Austin Harper. Thank you for opening your door. Thank you for letting us in. Thank you for giving me and Sarah a home and then giving me so much more than I ever dreamed possible." As the sun finally dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in one last burst of glorious color, Austin leaned over and kissed his wife, the same woman who had knocked on his door all those years ago, holding a crying baby and running for her life. He had let them both in, and in doing so, had found everything he had never known he was missing. The years that followed were gentle ones. Austin and Natalie grew old together, their bodies slowing down but their love never diminishing. They eventually turned over the daily running of the ranch to Thomas and his new wife, content to spend their days in the house Austin had built, surrounded by their growing family. On their 30th wedding anniversary, the whole family gathered for a celebration. The ranch house could not hold everyone anymore, so they set up tables in the yard, under strings of lanterns that Thomas had hung from the trees. There must have been 50 people there, children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, all of them connected by the love that Austin and Natalie shared. Sarah, now 44 and a grandmother herself, stood to make a toast. "When I was a baby, my Aunt Natalie saved my life. She took me and ran, with nothing but the clothes on her back and love in her heart. She brought me to a stranger's door on the coldest night of the year, and that stranger became my father. He became the man who taught me what love looks like, what family means, what it is to build something lasting and good. So I want to toast to Austin and Natalie Harper, the two people who taught all of us what really matters in this life. To family, to love, and to the courage to knock on a stranger's door when you need help." "To family," everyone echoed, raising their glasses. Austin and Natalie stood together, looking out at the sea of beloved faces, and Austin felt complete in a way he had never imagined possible. This was his legacy. Not the land or the cattle or the money in the bank, but the people gathered here, bound together by love. That night, after everyone had gone home and the house was quiet again, Austin and Natalie lay in bed together as they had done thousands of times before. Natalie's head rested on Austin's chest, his arm around her shoulders, their bodies fitting together with the ease of long familiarity. 30 years, Natalie whispered. "Where did the time go? Into this," Austin said, gesturing at the house around them, at the life they had built. "Into every day we spent together, every meal we shared, every child we raised, every challenge we faced. The time went into building something beautiful." "It is beautiful, is it not?" Natalie said. "More than I ever dreamed." "More than either of us dreamed," Austin agreed. "And it all started with you being brave enough to knock on my door. And you being kind enough to let me in," Natalie finished. They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, their hearts beating in rhythm, two people who had found in each other everything they needed. Austin Harper lived to be 78 years old, dying peacefully in his sleep with Natalie beside him. She followed him 3 years later, at the age of 69, her heart simply giving out one quiet morning. They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch, under a cottonwood tree that Austin had planted the year they were married. The ranch stayed in the family, passed down through the generations, each one adding their own touches but always maintaining the spirit of love and hard work that Austin and Natalie had established. The story of how they met became family legend, told and retold to each new generation. The house where Natalie had knocked on that cold December night in 1878 was preserved and maintained, and eventually became a kind of shrine to the love story that had started there. Sarah, who lived to be 92, never forgot the man who had been her father in every way that mattered. She made sure all her children and grandchildren knew the story of how a cowboy had opened his door to a desperate woman and a crying baby, and how that single act of kindness had created a legacy of love that would last forever. And so the story of Austin and Natalie Harper became more than just a family tale. It became a reminder that love can be found in the most unexpected places, that courage and kindness can change the course of a life, and that sometimes the greatest adventures begin with a simple knock on a door and the choice to let someone in. The ranch still stands today, passed down through 6 generations of Harpers, each one knowing the story of their ancestors and the love that started it all. On cold December nights, when the wind howls across the New Mexico plains, just as it did in 1878, the current generation of Harpers sometimes stands on the porch of that original house, and imagines what it must have been like, that moment when everything changed. They imagine a young woman, terrified and desperate, clutching a crying baby against the bitter cold. They imagine a lonely cowboy, hearing that knock and making the choice that would define the rest of his life. They imagine the door opening, warmth spilling out into the darkness, and two souls finding in each other exactly what they needed. And they understand that love is not always a grand gesture or a sweeping romance. Sometimes love is simply opening your door when someone knocks. Sometimes love is letting someone in, offering them shelter and safety, and discovering that in giving them what they need, you receive everything you never knew you wanted. That is the legacy of Austin and Natalie Harper. Not just the land or the ranch or the family name, but the understanding that love, real love, is built on kindness, courage, and the willingness to take a chance on a stranger who knocks on your door in the middle of a cold December night. And they all lived and loved, and passed down that lesson through the generations, ensuring that the story of the cowboy who let them both in would never be forgotten.